Good evening. Welcome to the June 5th City Council meeting. I call the meeting to order. And tonight we have a special guest to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, and her name is Jordy Seacrest. Would you come to the stand, and would everybody join me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Yes, Jordy, you have to stay up here for a minute because we have some very important questions to ask you. And the first one is, where do you go to school?
I go to school at the Stillwater Middle School.
And let's see, what else can I ask you? I told you I was going to ask you a bunch of things. What's your favorite subject?
My favorite subject is language arts.
Very good. And do you do anything after school or part of school that's really not a class? Or maybe it is a class.
I play in the Stillwater band.
And what do you play?
The clarinet.
You play the clarinet? Very cool. And here's the real question. What do you want to be when you grow up?
I'm going to be in the United States military and be a Navy corpsman.
Isn't that cool? That's awesome. Very cool. Yeah. Navy, but this is just a little gift. But we're really proud that you're going to do that. You already know what you're going to do. Thank you. So nice to meet you. Good luck.
Thank you.
All right. We have so many impressive young people. Jordy was one of them. Okay, that brings us to the consent docket. Counselors, does anyone wish to remove or clarify an item?
We ask that you remove item I.
Item I?
Item I, and just actually strike it from the agenda. We don't need to take it up later in the meeting.
Okay, it will be at
For a separate meeting. Yes,
okay, great.
It's incomplete.
So we are striking item I. Is there anything else? Or is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the consent docket. Please vote. And with a vote of 5-0, the consent docket is approved. And before I go any further, if you're noticing, we do not have Norman McNichol here, but we do have Dan Blankenship up here. So welcome, and we're glad to have you, and thank you for taking the reins.
Oh, yeah, you're welcome.
Okay.
Good to be here.
All right. All right, that takes us to public hearings, item 6. Item A, receive public comment regarding a proposed amendment to the Land Development Code, Chapter 23, Section 23-97, General Structures and Uses within Residential Districts, Section 23 through 98, General Structures and Uses within all other districts, and Sections 23 through 121, exemptions, setbacks for fences, etc., projections into yards. It is CC-17-91. Mr. Dorman, did we have good notice on this item?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Blankenship.
Yes, this evening, Development Services Director Paula Dennison will make the report.
Good evening, Paula Dennison with Development Services. I'm not going to reread the whole title. Mayor, thank you for reading that for us. What we have before you this evening is Land Development Code amendments and covering a few things that we have identified throughout the course of applying the Land Development Code that needed some adjustment. So right quickly, the amendment, a copy of it is in your packet. It was included in your packet as well as the Planning Commission information. But the key points on the amendments are these 3: accessory buildings and structures, projections and encroachments, and fence height and location. Identified in your report is the the rationale or the justification for this, we're modifying the code, we're cleaning up the code, we're clarifying the code. In particular, we are expanding the situations where fences are more appropriate, because a general application across the community we have found is not appropriate in all situations. So we are recognizing that and expanding that. We're bringing the code more in sync and in line with the building code. The structural integrity of fences, when is an engineering design on a fence required, at what height is it required? Setbacks for accessory buildings and shade structures. And then one of the interesting ones that was brought to our attention and actually went to the Board of Adjustment is projections of non-habitable structural elements over our height limit that we set in the certain zoning districts. For example, domes, you see around the university, there on private property, there are a lot of buildings that have domes. They have the elevator housing shafts. They have other appurtenances or architectural features, and they're in excess of our set maximum height limit. So what this ordinance, this text amendment does is it clarifies those, and it brings them in line with some other sections of the code, and it addresses the issues that have been identified throughout the community. Do you have any questions of me at this time?
Counselors? Okay. At this time, I will open the public hearing, and we have one speaker. Roger Gose.
Thank you, Roger Gose, 113 East 8th. I spoke to this at Planning Commission, and the only thing I didn't find, and Paula kick me if I'm wrong, on the private energy systems, you could locate the pole or the structure within 3 feet of the rear property line. I'm thinking that might be a little imposing in somebody's backyard. So I don't know really how to reword that, but it was something I thought ought to be addressed. It wasn't changed up. Okay. That was the one thing I saw that I thought you ought to be aware of that's in there.
Okay, thank you. Okay, at this time, I will close the public meeting and ask Ms. Dennison to come back.
Thank you. The Plan Commission did identify a couple of things after discussion at their meeting, and they are also reflected in the language that you have, whatever was added by the Plan Commission or was stricken. And there was no change recommended from the Planning Commission on that Mr. Gose just spoke to, and they are sending a recommendation of approval with those changes that came out of the Planning Commission meeting to you.
Okay. Counselors, questions?
Are there any examples of stuff we've seen up here that would be handled differently with these code changes? I'm thinking of particularly the fence on 9th Street.
Yes. Yes. It still would not be allowed within the right-of-way because that is public property. The right-of-way is. The height, and I can, without getting into the specifics of it, the height requirements are not that drastically different. However, there are some allowances if you're on an interior lot as opposed to a corner lot. And the one that came before y'all was an interior lot. In this situation, that would still not be allowed because their issue was more the projection through their yard and into the public right-of-way, which this does not affect that.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Other questions?
I just have a comment. I know it wasn't part of the text amendment, but Mr. Gose's comment at the Planning Commission about landscape, the requirement that it actually be living and stay living,
Yes.
I appreciated that.
Questions? More? Okay, is there a motion?
Motion to accept Planning Commission recommendation?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to accept Planning Commission recommendations on CC-17-91. Please vote. With a vote of 5-0, CC-17-91 is approved. We're going to do a little bit of change up here. I'm going to recess City Council at this time, and we are going to go to SEDA, to the SEDA agenda. Or Stillwater Economic Development Authority, sorry. Do I need a motion to recess, or did we just? Okay, okay. All right, so I'm going to call the Stillwater Economic Development Authority meeting to order. And on the consent docket, trustees, does anyone wish to approve, or is there a question?
Motion to approve.
We have a motion and a second to approve the SEDA consent docket. Please vote. With a vote of 5-0, the consent docket is approved. That takes us to general orders. Mr. Blankenship.
Yes, Mr. Dorman will introduce this item this evening.
This is related to the item that's actually on the council agenda with regard to the special use permit. Back on, May 15th, you had a public hearing for a special use permit to allow office use in the North Perkins TIF, North Perkins Road Tax Increment Financing District. The application was filed by Aspen Dental. At the conclusion of the hearing, I asked you to continue this item because the development agreement, which is part and parcel of the North Perkins Road TIF, has a requirement that the developer submit plans in advance of any development of property there. And given the nature of this development, it was incumbent upon us to bring that to your attention. So that brings us to tonight's meeting. Basically, the development agreement provides for 5 parcels, the major parcel being the Academy store that's there, the second large parcel being a grocery store / retail development, which is now occupied by the Walmart. And then there are 3 outlots along the Perkins Road, and they are by, according to Section 2.1 in the conceptual plan, designated as retail or restaurant type developments. And as I mentioned, the development agreement sections 5, 6, and 5.8 do provide for submission to SEDA prior to development. And in the case of Section 5.8, it does require that any change in the conceptual plan be approved by the SEDA trustees. And so given that the Aspen Dental facility as presented does have an office use in it, it doesn't fit neatly within the definitions that are within the conceptual plan. So for you to go forward on this specific use permit and to allow that development to occur, you will need to authorize the amendment of the development agreement to change that one tract to allow for some office development. And with that, I would entertain any questions.
Trustees.
So we're looking at specifically this tract of land. We're not looking at amending the entire agreement in the North Perkins TIF area.
No,
right?
just the specific
this
parcel,
specific-
yes.
Okay.
I'm wondering if, in very, very plain language, you could say, what is the benefit of this to the city? What is the disadvantage to the city?
Well, I don't know that, I mean, the city obviously has benefited by getting the academy in this development. The part of the reason for bringing this to your attention is that the development plan does call for 5 retail developments, and this would remove one of those. So you do have to weigh that in conjunction with the other development that has gone forward there. But otherwise, it's just a matter of you deciding whether or not you want to amend the development agreement.
So we had an original contract for 5 retail.
Yes, ma'am.
Now we'll have, if we approve this, we would have 4 retail.
4 retail, yes, ma'am.
And so we're losing, we're losing sales tax potential.
Yes, the services don't provide for sales tax in Oklahoma. So in other states they do, but here that would not be something that would be recoverable by the city.
Okay.
So how does it affect the payback of the funds used, the recovery of the TIF money?
It's my understanding, and Mr. Whitson is present here today, and I would certainly not try to speak in his place. It's my understanding that all of the project costs have been expended, and that the existing retail development should be sufficient to cover those project costs over the duration of the TIF district, which I believe there's still 13 years left in it.
Just so I'm clear on how this works, the TIF money, the increment that Mr. Whitson or the owner of the property gets back is paid to him out of the sales tax that these parcels generate,
Yes.
right? So if they generate less, if they generate less sales tax out of these 5 parcels, it only affects his ability to recover the funds that have been expended on the public improvements, correct?
It would affect his ability to recover, yes. If he doesn't, if these sales, if the parcels that are in place now don't recover all of the sales tax, then over the duration of the TIF, then he doesn't get paid back.
Yep. So the city's not necessarily out any money, but our concern would be that we put a TIF in place in order to encourage retail development that generates sales tax for the city, and this is not actually retail development that is generating sales tax for the city.
Right. It doesn't actually cost the city anything in terms of actual dollars, but in terms of the intended development of 5 lots, it would impact that.
Okay, thank you.
Questions or comments more? Should I have Mr. Whitson come now, or should we go back
He came here all the way
to-
from Birmingham.
Okay. Sit tight, we are going to call you. So what do we need to do right now?
What your action tonight would be, you have to authorize the amendment of the development agreement, because it doesn't, just so that the language in the conceptual plan is consistent. And the development agreement actually requires that, so.
Do we do that right now, or do we go back to the public hearing and city council?
Any action taken by SEDA would have to be done now. So
Okay,
that would be the one motion that you would have to entertain.
Okay.
I have one other question.
Yes.
What if one of the other retail properties failed and another non-retail property wanted to go in there? We would have to go through this process again
Yes, ma'am.
with this precedent already set?
Yes.
If we approve this.
I would like to hear from the developer on why this is the better use of the property than
Okay,
a retail.
let's call him forward now.
Hi, my name is John Whitson. OK, Stillwater Perkins LLC, 4209 Autumn Lane, Birmingham, Alabama. Thank you so much for the time. I'm going to address the questions a little bit haphazardly. But to start with, one thing I do want to point out is we're talking about 3,500 square feet in an overall development that's about 120,000 square feet. The development also, what we're talking about doing is not taking this parcel and taking it out of retail use. We're talking about taking this parcel and allowing a piece of office use to also enable additional retail use there. So there's an additional 2,500 square feet of retail that will come in. So this is kind of the kickoff piece for this last little parcel. Mr. Joyce, you brought up the question of the risk profile to the city versus the developer. And I think that's a fair question. As Mr. Dorman stated correctly, we have already expended all of the funds that we were to expend under the development agreement and then some between ourselves and our partner, as it's referred to in the development agreement, our partner development. So that would be the Walmart and the coming Wendy's. Actually, the Wendy's doesn't contribute to the cost factor at all. All got done with Walmart. So the question becomes, do we feel like putting this property in use now and getting sales tax dollars off of the additional 2,500 square feet and kind of finishing out this project is the right thing to do? And I would say, yes, it is. You know, we take what is a raw red dirt pile with some grass that needs to be thrown on it, or, you know, a retail building to be thrown on it. And that's what we're trying to do, is just get this one over the hump.
So this fifth parcel
Yes, sir.
would be developed for more than one tenant?
Yes, sir.
And one of the tenants would be this dental office, and then your plan is that with that in the space, then those other two spots they're not rented out yet, but you expect they're going to go to retail businesses?
Correct. They'd have to go to retail businesses.
Do we have, in our, Mr. Norman, in our approval of this, do we can accept out just part of this building to be for non-retail use, while maintaining that the other two parcels would have to go to retail use?
I would actually direct that question back to Mr. Whitson in that, are you, the SUP application is for the entire piece?
I think that's because it has to be, or was our understanding. If it's just for a portion of use, I'm perfectly happy capping the square footage allowed.
Can we do that? We can do that. If you want to cap the square footage, you could do that as well.
Yeah. And I would suggest we cap it at slightly more than 3,500 square feet. So if we come in and build 3,560, we haven't created the problem for ourselves.
Okay.
But this does change the agreement.
Yes, ma'am, it does. And shame on me, in many other municipalities, this would not be considered an office use, it was a retail use, and I didn't check that back in 14 when we started this process, so.
You knew this was coming and.
No, I should have checked, though. I mean, you always,
All right.
you're right, you always, hey, look, I did really well, I think, on the proposed development plan. It looks pretty close to where we are, almost identical.
Oh,
What's the
not
fourth-
all the things that are in there are identical, but, okay.
What's the fourth parcel? The
Wendy's.
What's the other one?
Oh, so Fuel Center?
Oh, okay, the
So
Fuel Center.
Academy, Neighborhood Market, Fuel Center, Wendy's, this parcel. You like my drawing?
Okay, any more questions?
Do you have a specific square footage you want to cap that at, if that's an option?
I'd be comfortable at 3,800 square feet.
3,800.
I mean, it's a 3,500 square foot space, so we can't mess it up that much.
Okay. Well, and you have the underlying zoning, so if it's, if you come right in at 3,500 square feet, then the other 300 feet are covered by the underlying zoning, so we're good to go.
Right, I mean, the building itself is 6,000 square feet, right? It's just, I'm just looking to say, let's cap the office use at 3,800 square feet. So if that wall shifts over 6 inches, we haven't, messed up.
Okay.
More questions?
Thank you very much.
Mr. Whitson.
Appreciate it.
Okay,
So, I
there a
mean, it
motion?
makes sense to say, this non-retail piece of this development helps make sure the rest of it gets filled out. If he doesn't have another retail spot that's ready to go in there, I'd rather it gets used than it sits there vacant, and potentially it spurs some other stuff to happen. It's not I can't see anything that I'm particularly offended by in terms of putting it there. So I would make a motion to, I guess, modify the agreement to allow for up to 3,800 square feet of office use on this parcel? Is that what we need to do for this?
That's essentially it, yes. We'd authorize the amendment of that, up to 3,800 square feet for office use, and the balance remaining retail restaurant.
I'll make that motion.
is there a second? There is a motion and a second to authorize the amendment of the development agreement. Did I say that correctly?
Yes, ma'am.
Please vote. With a vote of 4-1, it passed. I will say that I voted no because we have one TIF agreement, and I want to be careful in the future how we deal with this. And if there are always changes, then it's just a little bit concerning, but glad that Aspen Dental will be there. Okay, that takes us to reports from officers and boards, and we're still on the SEDA. Any general counsel,
Nothing to report tonight, ma'am.
general manager,
Nothing, ma'am.
trustees? Do we have a motion and a second to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn?
Second?
We have a motion and a second to adjourn. Please vote. And someone didn't vote.
I think that was me, sorry.
With a vote of 5-0, we are adjourned, and we will go back to the city council.
6:55.
Item number B. We need to vote on that again? No?
You'll just
Yes?
reopen the hearing on that.
Okay. So, reopen the hearing on item number B, receive public comment.
Yep, I think if you just read the title
Okay.
and we'll get going.
Receive public comment regarding a request for a specific use permit from OK Stillwater Perkins LLC for a healthcare and social assistance use dental office in the CS Commercial Shopping District, 2307 North Perkins Road, continued from May 15th, 2017, CC-17-79. Mr. Dorman, did we have good notice on this?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Blankenship.
Thank you, ma'am. The presentation this evening will be by Paula Dennison, our Development Services Director.
Thank you. Y'all have heard the Aspen Dental is the request to go in with a specific use permit. The property is on commercial shopping, and therefore it requires the SUP for the healthcare and special assistance use on the property. You can see where it is located on the northeast intersection of Perkins Road and Lakeview. It's the area that's outlined in the black. This is the Academy store. When we had this aerial, the neighborhood market was not even under construction yet. The fuel center, and this is the pad site that Wendy's will be locating on. So this is the property in question. As Mr. Whitson has already discussed, the building is proposed in one large and two small tenant spaces. So this gives you an idea about the breakdown that y'all had just discussed. So the building is just over 5,800 square feet, so that does allow the 3,800 square feet for the office use, and then the rest will be the retail. They did come in with the SUP covering the entire building. That was the original request. In case they needed to utilize the full building for the office use. Here is a view from the intersection of Lakeview and Perkins, and I will allow any questions that anybody has at this time.
So could they use it, the full building, since we're doing a SUP for the whole thing? Could the whole building be said, we need it?
Not in conformance with what was just decided at SEDA. They will have to comply with that.
Okay.
So we'll be amending the recommendation from the Planning Commission on the fly.
All right, councilors, questions?
Even if we gave them this SUP for the whole building, they'd still only be able to use the 3,800 for retail under the development agreement, right?
That is correct.
Does whichever one's more restrictive, I guess, controls here?
Yes.
Or the development agreement is going to control no matter what?
Right.
Okay.
Any more questions? Okay, this time I will open the public hearing. Mr. Whitson, would you like to come back? Do you have anything else to say? Okay, then I will close the public hearing.
Roger asked, we had a request from Roger.
Oh.
We're good.
Anybody have questions for Roger? Okay, sorry. All right. Now I close the public hearing, and Ms. Dennison.
Yes, thank you. The Planning Commission did recommend approval of the specific use permit for the office use on this property in the CS zoning district. To make everything match, I would encourage the condition be approval, but limit that office use space to the 3,800 square feet.
Counselors? Is there a
Sounds good.
recommendation?
Motion to approve.
Second?
Never mind, go ahead. Well, I was going to ask, so do we not need to revisit this later then? If we approve this now, is it still in conformity with the development agreement? Like you said, do we need to reword this now?
It's a simple rewording. The Planning Commission did not evaluate any square footages breakdown. Their analysis is for the use.
Okay.
Does it match or go along with the other uses in the vicinity and on the property?
Okay.
So the council has full freedom to make any additional amendments to that recommendation.
Okay, did I hear a motion? Second?
Yep.
We have a motion and a second to approve Planning Commission's recommendations with the wording changed just a little bit.
The
Please.
reduction to 3,800 square feet total space.
All right, please vote. And with a vote of 4-1, the motion is approved. And again, since I'm the only no vote, I will say that I believe TIF agreements are there for a reason, and that we voted on the TIF to add to our sales tax. So that's why I'm voting no. All right, that takes us to ordinances. On first reading, Mr. Dorman.
Ordinance number 3368, an ordinance closing a permanent easement and right-of-way located on property addressed as 1220 West 12th Avenue.
Discussion? Do we have a motion to advance?
Motion to advance that to second reading.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to advance ordinance number 3368 to second reading. Please vote. A vote of 5-0, that is approved. Takes us to item B, ordinance number 3369 on first reading. Mr. Dorman.
An ordinance rezoning attractive land located at 702 South Jardo Road from RMH Mobile Manufactured Home District to RTM Residential Two-Family and Multifamily District.
Discussion.
Motion to advance.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to advance ordinance number 3369. Please vote. With a vote of 5-0, that is approved. Takes us to item C, ordinance number 3370. Mr. Dorman.
An ordinance rezoning attractive land located at 1121 West 4th Avenue from RTM Residential Two-Family and Multifamily District to RMI Residential Multifamily Intermediate District.
Discussion.
Motion to advance.
We have a motion and a second to advance ordinance number 3370. Please vote. With a vote of 5-0, 3370 advances. And that takes us to item D, ordinance number 3371. Mr. Dorman.
An ordinance rezoning attractive land located at 823 West 11th Avenue from RSS Small Lot Single Family Residential District to O Office District.
Discussion.
Motion to advance.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to advance ordinance number 3371. Please vote. With a vote of 5-0, ordinance number 3371 advances. That takes us to reports from officers and boards. City Attorney,
Nothing to report tonight, ma'am.
City Manager.
If I may, I have a couple items,
Yes.
please. Okay, I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce you all to Monty Carnes. Mr. Monty Carnes, he's our new Transportation and Stormwater Director. This is Monty's second go-around with the City of Stillwater. A few years ago, he succeeded Mr. Roger Gose as the city engineer. So we're very happy to have Monty. He came to us from OSU and maybe a little bit of semi-retirement, but he knows the city well, and we're very thrilled to have him with us in that capacity.
Welcome. Welcome, and we're glad to have you.
Secondly, I would just like to apologize to the general public for all of the inconvenience that all of the road construction is causing you all. It's Definitely a lot of stuff going on. I was driving down Lakeview, I think it was Saturday, with my wife, and I saw the variable message boards that said Lakeview's going to be closed, and I looked at her and I said, who's in charge of this mess? But we're very fortunate to have this level of activity in our community. Today, the west leg of the intersection of 6th and Perkins was closed to help accelerate that project and hopefully get it completed on time. It's scheduled to be done at the end of the summer, but very much appreciate the public's patience in dealing with this. There is a lot of activity going on, but we hope that by the end of the summer that'll settle down a lot and we'll have a lot of nice new roadways to drive on.
It's called progress.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, counselors, do you have any news?
Oh, I do. This month's sales tax collections are in, and our chief financial officer says that they have exceeded collections for the same month last year by 0.31%, which is good news. However, sales tax receipts overall are below budget by 1.75% and behind last year to date by more than $500,000. Be on the lookout for monthly updates on sales tax collections in the news section of the city's website. Do your best to buy more stuff.
Here.
Locally, yeah, in Stillwater.
Counselor Zanotti.
Yes, this morning, the refurbished Couch Park tennis courts were reopened and kicked off the first summer tennis lesson. Court refurbishments included replacing the court's surface material, fencing, gates, and several other new features. If you have a chance, take a look at the new bright blue courts, and remember, summer tennis lesson registration is still open.
Great, thank you. Counselor Joyce.
You got the fun one. I unfortunately get the one that discusses our the announcement from last week that an unauthorized party had access to a city computer for a period of 22 days. Letters have been mailed to the most recent addresses for affected people. To learn more about this security breach, please go to the City of Stillwater website, stillwater.org, and click IT Security Breach on the homepage.
And Counselor Whibley.
All right. On a lighter note, Ingham Park Playground is about to reopen, located at 4th and Ridge. Construction crews have completely removed the supports and surface from the previous playground equipment, and all new playground implements have been installed. So weather permitting, the park should reopen in about 2 weeks. So 4th and Ridge, Ingham Park.
And I just have to say, I drove down 12th Street today, and I was telling Vice Mayor Darlington, there is nothing more exciting than driving down 12th Street and seeing the dog park full, the park full, and the splash pad full. I mean, families are getting out, and so it's just, I will drive down 12th Street every day to see that.
Boomer Lake Splash Pad has
Yes.
been the same way, just
I will run through
a
that
bunch
when I'm
of
running.
happy voices, yes.
Good plan.
Yes.
With all those kids, be careful watching the speed limit on 12th Street and making turns onto the neighborhood streets. A lot of
Always
kids.
good advice.
I also would be remiss, my wife would probably kill me if I didn't mention this, but congratulations to everybody that ran and finished the Scorcher run on Sunday, which is a locally operated entity. So if you all have any dreams of running a 5K or maybe your first half marathon, the Stillwater Scorcher was great.
And it was pouring rain, I think. when
It was, which kept everything cool, actually,
cool.
yeah.
Very good. All right, anything else? Okay, is there a motion to adjourn the city council meeting?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn city council. Please vote. And with a vote of 5-0, the city council meeting is adjourned, and we will go to the Stillwater Utilities Authority meeting. I call the meeting to order. Trustees on the consent docket, anyone wish to remove an item, or is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the consent docket. Please vote. And with a vote of 5-0, the consent docket is approved. That takes us to general orders. A net metering interconnection agreement update, SUA 17-30. 13, Mr. Blankenship.
Thank you, Chairman. Our Electric Director, Lauren Smith, will present this item this evening, please.
Good evening. Lauren Smith, Electric Utility Director. The net metering interconnection agreement is for customers who intend to install, own, or operate electric generation equipment using fuels derived from biomass, waste, or renewable energy sources such as wind and solar. To produce electricity having a maximum rated electric output of 100 kWs or less. When a net metering customer generates more electricity than they consume during any billing period, the customer is provided a credit for the excess electricity that flows onto the SUA's electric distribution system. In a recent review of the net metering program, it was determined that the agreement could be misleading customers to believe that they may receive payments for excess energy that they generate, when in fact the intent was to issue a credit. Although the current agreement states that the customer waives the right to receive any payments in cash, other language in the agreement suggests otherwise and could be easily misunderstood. To clarify how the SUA provides credit for any excess electricity generated by the customer, changes to Sections 1 and 2 of the agreement are proposed. The proposed changes will ensure that the SUA is crediting the customer at a rate equal to the avoided wholesale energy portion of the SUA's purchase power cost and removes any wording related to sell or sale. Simply stated, the SUA will measure the electricity delivered to the customer and the electricity delivered from the customer. The SUA will bill the customer at the applicable rate for the electricity delivered to them and will be credited for the customer at a avoided wholesale energy purchase power cost for the electricity delivered to the SUA. Although net metering is a simple approach to dealing with customer-owned generation, also known as distributed generation, it is not the most equitable approach. To date, there are so few customers that own generation, net metering has not adversely impacted those customers who do not own generation. However, with the growth and interest in customer-owned generation, if there is an increase in customer-owned generation and a distributed generation rate is not established, the current electric rate structure will not allow the SUA to recover the full cost of serving the distributed generation customers. If the SUA does not recover the full cost of serving any customer group, the other customer groups have to pick up the slack for them, which is not desirable. Therefore, staff has begun the process to develop a distributed generation rate that will be presented to the trustees later this year. I do have a recommendation, but I would be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Trustees?
I guess my question would be, the simple solution here seems to be to reimburse those customers at the same rate we charge customers for using energy, right?
There's many different costs that go into our fixed costs that go into our bill from Grand River Dam Authority. We pay demand cost and PCA fuel cost and other things like that they don't need to pay for. But Dan, feel free to.
Yeah, our retail rate includes a number of things in addition to just the energy cost. And so what we're paying or what we're crediting the customer for is that energy cost. As if we were just say we were purchasing it from Grand River Dam Authority, we're purchasing it or giving customer credit at that exact same rate. So we've got a lot of costs associated in the transmission and in the distribution of that, and that's where the retail price differs from the wholesale price.
Is there I think I agree with that question, because I'm sort of going, well, why wouldn't you just give them their money back? But there's a couple pieces of that. Is it based on the per hour, or is it based on the cost?
Per kilowatt hour?
Yeah.
Right, yes.
So if I generate, I don't know these numbers, 50 kilowatt hours myself, and I used 50, then they get crossed out and I don't owe anything for the month, correct? Or do I get charged the retail rate for 50 and then get credited back the wholesale rate for 50? So I still owe the difference.
Yeah, it would be a net it would be a net difference.
Right.
So in that case, if we delivered, well, you would pay for what we delivered to you, and then we would give you credit for what you delivered to us.
At the wholesale rate.
At the
So I'd
wholesale
still
rate.
owe
Yes.
the
Because
retail
we have
margin.
fixed
Right.
costs to get
Right.
the power to
Yes,
them.
because we still have to have the lines up.
You bet, there you
Right.
go.
Right, yeah.
That is absolutely the key. Yeah,
Exactly.
You bet. And we need to be compensated for that, and if not, we won't be made whole.
Okay.
I have a question in the first paragraph. This refers to producing electricity having a maximum rated electrical output of 100 kilowatts or less.
Yes, ma'am?
Could a person produce more than 100 kilowatts?
That is actually a part of our GRD, that's the limit established in our GRDA contract. And we're starting to work with GRDA on some distributed generation things. That is one of the topics for discussion, I think.
Right, and that's the rating of the actual system that's being installed, and that more than covers all of the residential type systems. If a larger commercial user, say like a big box, wanted to come in, they would probably want to install something greater than a 100 kilowatt system, and so then they would have to come to the utility and to negotiate a special arrangement for that at this time.
Any other questions?
No, I mean, these changes make sense, and I think it's good that we're looking at this from the fact that this is going to continue to grow, and we are going to get these stores that come in and say we want to put up solar
Yes.
panels or whatever, so we do need to have a.
And it's a key
update.
point. Right now, we have 6 customers out of 21,000 meters, right? So,
Much rather be proactive than reactive.
yes, and that's
Yeah,
exactly
one
what
bit
we're
of that.
doing.
And that's why we're working on what we call the distributed generation rate structure, because then that will enable any type of distributed generation if a customer wanted to implement that, and we can charge them equitably and not put an extra burden on the other customers.
Absolutely.
Okay, do we vote?
Oh, I'm sorry, I had a recommendation for you. Staff recommends that the trustees approve the revised net metering agreement.
All right, is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to accept staff's recommendations. Please vote. With a vote of 5-0, staff recommendations are approved.
Thank you.
That takes us to reports from officers and board. General counsel,
Nothing to report, ma'am.
general manager,
Nothing this evening.
trustees.
No, thank you.
Do we have a motion and a second to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn. Please vote. And with a vote of 5-0, we are adjourned from Stillwater Utilities Authority meeting.